Come on. Welcome, everyone. I'm here with Peter Renzullo, and we are going live. Oh, he's just cut out. Wait for him to come back.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, that's right. You're back now. It's all good.
Yep, good. What's going to happen?
So we're going to discuss the film, and we're also going to discuss the Crowdfunder.
Yep,
So,
nice.
Pete, do you want to let everyone know what your role in the actual film is?
Yeah, well, I'll be actually doing the directing of the film, and also I'll be doing cinematography. I've also got the post-production duty too, so I'll be doing the edit. And in this one here, first time really, I'm doing a lot of VFX stuff, which will be interesting. So I'm curious to see how that's going to turn out. I think everyone is. I think it's going to be a pretty VFX interesting film, this one.
And is that we're hoping to do that more, as many practical effects as possible, or do you think most of it will be done in camera?
Oh, totally. Yeah, look, I mean, you can't beat having something real under real lights as opposed to trying to. For example, I recently did an edit for one of the characters, their photo for the vampire. I think played by Crystal, and so I had to elongate her teeth, and that's straightforward enough to do for one frame. It took me about 20 minutes. But if you're doing 25 frames a second, it's going to be interesting. So we'll see how we go. If we can get real ones, awesome. But if not, it's going to be a long, long process.
I've got ones that they glue onto the side. They're not as long, but they come in I think 4 different lengths. But they can't. They're the ones that you can talk with while they've got them on. The other ones are retractable ones, so they just operate it with their tongue, but they can't talk very well with them in. So
so you can control them coming out and up and down.
Yeah, so there's a little bar that goes across with your tongue, and it flicks the fangs up and down. They're just credit ones,
cool.
But the other ones
that'd be awesome.
Other ones you actually glue on, and you can talk with them on. So
we can. Well, let's try that first before we try the VFX version.
Yeah, because they won't look as long, but that's fine. It won't really matter. So.
No, that's cool, yeah. I mean, again, if you're trying to talk, then practically having long things here is going to make it a bit harder. So even if they're short, just to give the impression she's a vampire, that's going to be cool. But one thing that's kind of cool with this film, we're going to try with some contact, but if not, in the process of the post-production, we're going to try doing some highlighting of the eyes, the iris and the pupils, to make them really strong with colour, because certain characters will be featuring a certain colour. So it'll be pretty cool to see how it turns out.
Well, the good thing is that the contacts are only actually needed when they're using their powers, or that they like the vampires or whatever. So they're not going to need the contacts in all the time. But again, if it irritates their eyes, we'll just have to do it another way. So
that's it. Totally. Yes, fine.
Yeah. So you've been pretty busy doing the effects and getting the crowdfunder together and all that, eh?
Yeah, I've done the initial teaser, which was like a little 30-second shot with everyone. I don't know if anyone's seen it yet. You might want to show them afterwards. Link it in the bottom. Just introducing some of the characters, just their faces and the way they're going to look with some of that, their eye effects. Yep. But there's actually a promo video coming out, which is very soon, that actually has them talking and interacting with an interviewer to basically give some insight into what's happening with this film. So that's the next step that's coming up very soon.
Yeah, because with the crowdfunder, we're trying to raise around $30,000. It doesn't sound it sounds like a lot, but it's not. It's more so I can pay everyone, and yes, do as many practical effects as we can. And have some there. Excuse me, if we need to, get some VFX done or something like that.
Exactly right. Yeah, if it gets to the.
So for me personally, if I don't make anything from it, I don't really care. I'd rather put extra towards the production or whatever it is. But
it's the biggest expense, like you said. I mean, good VFX, it will cost a bit because you want to get someone who's an established artist in that field and they know what they're doing. But I'm just keen to learn how to do it. But when it comes to actually the final product, it's going to need someone who's done this for years or knows how to make real-looking smoke or make real-looking eyes or just to make it look. Or otherwise, it's going to cheapen everything, and you don't want that. So some of the cost might come into just making this thing look as good as it can be, really. And
so if we found someone that was able to do it, would you sit with them while they're doing it, or would you just get them to do it and send it to you and then,
No, totally. In fact, I've got someone in mind already who's amazing at VFX. He's done it for 30 years or more. He's done stuff like Hollywood level stuff, and he's not very well known, which is awesome because and he happens to be a family friend, which is actually it's sort of so it's very, very cool. He's actually based in Perth at the moment, but even if he has to go somewhere else, because he might be moving somewhere soon, we can still do it via the interweb.
Absolutely.
We can do stuff still. He's done stuff for TV and film, so he's amazing, and I trust him to do all sorts of stuff. So he'd be great. If we need to use him, awesome. If not, then even better. If most of it's practical, it's going to save money and time.
So obviously the script was originally 16 pages. Now it's going to be out to about 40. But what Aaron's done is Aaron's put a contingency together. So he is writing one about 20, 25 pages just in case we don't have the ability to make the longer one. So the other one he's doing allows us to do it in one location, and a bit more minimal. So
cool. That's awesome. And I suppose for anyone who doesn't really know the general idea with the script structure, one page is roughly 1 minute of footage. So it went from being a 15-minute film to being about 45 minutes. So it's getting into encroaching into feature sort of territory. That's good. We make raise the money, great. If not, then the 25-minute one could be cool.
Yeah, and so obviously would like to have made it a feature, but it's just getting the money. It's almost there, but it's trying to explore. The reason we made it longer was because we wanted to try and explore the backstories of everyone. But the problem is we didn't want to go. I think it gets to a point where if you tell the story too much, it gets boring. Because
it could be. I mean, the characters, even if the characters are very compelling, if it's too much in the backstory and not moving the story along, it might be a bit too much. Yeah, you're right.
Because you don't want to have to keep having flashbacks all the time and things like that. So
fair enough. That's true. And look, at worst, what we could do is produce a film that is about 20, 25 minutes long or so, almost as a teaser or a pilot for what could be a feature film one day, and use it as a way to almost generate more income to try and get funds for a feature version of this.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think, a lot of people say to me, why don't you just make features instead of making shorts? And again, like you're saying, I think it's good because you get feedback from people on the shorts as to whether it would work as a feature. But the aim for this, I want to actually make it into a franchise, a little bit like Fast and Furious, but not 35 of them. Maybe just 3 or 4.
Okay, yeah. Well, the way Aaron's made this world, this Outlands, it has the potential to be like this whole new. It's like Gotham City. It's got something about it that could be many, many stories within this one location or within this one setting. So it's exciting to see how it's going to turn out.
That's right, because you could, you've got each character, you've got all their backstories. You could make separate films just on them. You could make even pre-story about before it became the Outlands. There's so many different options you can do.
Totally. Even if you went down, we haven't discussed it, but even the avenue of maybe even like a series where an episode is of a certain character and you have like an 8-part series. There's ways we can do this. Who knows where it's going to go.
And so, what made you want to come on board the project?
Well, I guess the initial idea. The concept of the script. I tend to, sway towards the darker stories anyway with my own writing and with my own production. So when I saw this script from Aaron and it had those sort of elements which I really gravitate towards anyway, it felt like a good fit. But the difference was there's a lot more, I suppose, supernatural / technically VFX, practical effects involved in this one, which I hadn't done a lot of yet. So it was, for me, as a challenge, but also familiar territory as far as the story went.
Yeah, right. Hey, Trish. So Trish has commented. I've put it on Perth Filmmaking Community as well because
nice.
Some people are on there. So Trish Garnett said hi.
Sweet.
So we got a variety of different characters. I didn't want to just stick with the traditional, although we've got them traditional vampires and witches and that type of thing. We've got some other characters. So we've got Baku, which, if people don't know, it's from, I think, Japanese folklore.
I think it is, yeah.
Basically, it's not a fairy. It's something that can enter people's minds, and it can take out their nightmares and dreams, or it can put them in, and that type of thing. So it can actually empty someone's head and drive them completely crazy and lose all their memories. So Jaden Arts plays that character, who's Gabriel. Then we have Annabelle Earth, who's playing a Banshee. So basically, a Banshee is she lets out a scream, and it's like a sound wave that's used to disable people and things like that.
Totally.
We have Crystal, I think it's Della Posta. She's playing one of the vampires, Sasha. Then we have Jesse Hislop, who's playing Abraham. Now, Abraham is a warlock, but also becomes a serial killer, I guess, in a way. So
And I suppose, as a side note, it's just so cool. I've worked on many film productions around Perth. In fact, Trish's kids, Nate and Grace, there have been a lot of them. And all these characters, all these cast members, I've worked with before, or even the crew like Ash on sound. And we really are a community. It's crazy how just how close-knit a lot of these people are. So even if, like for example, Aaron, I've never met Aaron before, but I know half the cast, even though he found them independently from me. So we can't avoid each other. It's basically, and that's a good thing and a bad thing, I suppose. If you muck up and you get a name for yourself, it's not a good thing to be first,
No, that's right.
But you get a good reputation though, and everyone wants to work with you. So these guys here, they're a joy to work with, and hopefully Aaron, becomes part of that fold.
Well, that's right, and it's also when you go to film, like say film premieres and stuff, there might be a film come out a year or so later, but you still, everyone that's there, you already know them, and so you catch up with people you haven't seen, and I put a call out, and Aaron messaged me originally about writing it, and way back, I think last year, we went to Jasmine's house to start writing it, and then she had a tragedy, so I put it on hold for a little bit, and then Aaron got back in contact with me, and we started the ball rolling from there, and I like to use actors I know that I like yourself that I've worked with before. I did put a call out on Star Now. That's how I found Crystal, and I think she was the only one. There was a couple others, but they didn't get back to me. Most of them, I've never worked with Jaden before, but I've seen him on some stuff. And I haven't worked with Annabelle before, but I've heard good things about her as well. So I tend to use the people I know, and same with crew, like Ash on sound, Lisa on makeup, that type of thing.
Exactly, and recommendations are always, word of mouth is what really sells this, gives you a job or doesn't, so it's a cool thing. And also, is this Aaron's first script, or has he done a few scripts before and other things?
I think he's at TAFE at the moment writing some stuff, but I think this is like his first big...
Wow, that's cool. Well, he's done really well.
Yeah. Hey, Katie, how are you? And the good thing with Aaron is I think he's on a similar page just because he's like a Harry Potter fan, that sort of thing. And so this is sort of, although it's more the supernatural, some of the characters like the witches and the warlocks are in that sort of realm.
It is, and on a darker sort of scale. But you're right. It's a whole. It exists as a magical world, but without being sort of, I don't know, kid friendly, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to get away from that whole, Sabrina the Teenage Witch type of corniness.
Sure.
But I don't want to. I don't want to take a complete rip off from the Supernatural series either. So I'm trying to find a medium in between there where it's sort of a combination of a few things, and I think it's working okay. Hey, Bruce.
Yeah, that's right.
And then we've got Amanda Corey, who plays a kitsune. So kitsune in I think it's Japanese as well, is a fox that's able to transform into a person. And the more tails they get a new tail every 100 years. The more tails they get, the wiser they become, and they become like an elder. That's
right. And these are sort of creatures in folklore. In real life, they're the folklore creatures. Aaron hasn't invented these creatures, has he? He's
That's right.
Pulled from real folklore and stuff. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so I googled all supernatural creatures and started sending him through. There was a couple I had like incubus and that, but an incubus basically is a female. I don't know what you call it, but they have sex with men all the time and they take their souls in it.
Sort of like a siren, like they lure them in like a siren. Yeah.
And it wasn't really practical. So I sent him through a lot of characters, and then we went through and did that, and I sent him through the names that we came up with. Which I just picked names off the top of my head, just thought, that'd be pretty cool.
Well, I suppose that's the point, because one thing I've never really asked you, because...
Sorry, succubus. Yeah, thank you, Bruce.
Succubus, yeah, cool. Yeah, so when you come up with a concept for a film, like you want to get a film made, what's the process you go through? Do you first find the basic idea and then look for a writer, or have you got a writer in mind and then think,
so like with the version of that, I come up with the idea, and then I look for a writer. And I set as much of the idea in motion as I can. I write little bit notes here and there, And then I say to the writer, this is what I'm after. Then we go through it, and they might have a few different ideas to what I've got. Some might make it better, some might make it worse. And then we nut out what we can until we get to where we think it's good enough, but it's not going to bore people. And then I might send the script off to people who actually aren't involved in the film to have a look at it. I was told by some people one thing to do is when you like if you do the film before you do the final edit to show at a cinema, get some friends together, not so much family, but people that aren't involved in the film industry or aren't in the film. Sit them down, let them watch the edit, and then give them like little note cards and get them to make notes. So when you do the edit, I've never done that. I don't know if it works or not. But my main part is that's what I do. I come up with an idea. Like I've already got another couple of ideas going on, but I'm going to just do one at a time. And so I come up with an idea, get someone to write it, and then I work with them on that. And from there, I don't really feel, unless you're on a bigger project, that you need a casting director. So I usually just hit up people I know. And people like Demetrius and stuff have said that if I ask them, they'll do it because they've worked with other people who say, "Oh, we're going to do this film," but the script either never gets finished or never gets sent to them, or they don't get to the pre-production stage. So he said, but even with myself, they might not be the best films, but at least they get to the stage where we film them and they get made.
Sure, definitely.
And I think that's the big difference. Like yourself, your films you do or you're involved in get made, and that you do get a lot of people that criticise, but a lot of them are keyboard warriors. They don't do them themselves, and it's kind of like, well,
I think a lot of and this is not talking about anyone in particular, but a lot of I've come across some that love to, I guess, see themselves as filmmakers in this town. And they'll behave in a way that they've made 50 films when they haven't even made one yet, and that they're sort of shooting themselves in the foot because no one wants to work with them. They have no real grounding in what it takes to actually make a film. They'll say, well, this is how it is on a film set. You got to do what we say, and they have the whole hierarchy nonsense. It really is a team effort. Even though I've made quite a few films now, I might come across someone who's never made a film. I'll treat them the same way as if I would have been treated if I was the first on set. Otherwise, you just don't get anywhere. And egos has no place in filmmaking. A lot of people that have come fresh out of school tend to have them more than ones who have made 50 films. It's a weird thing. So, and this is the wrong town to do that in because everyone knows each other, like I was saying before. So it's important for me to have the right attitude and also the right reputation because I want to keep working in this industry. And reputation's got to do that, not my abilities, how well I am able to work with. So it's a hard balance, but it's an important one. I think paramount is being easy to work with. Otherwise, no one's going to want to work with you again.
Right.
And there's only a few people here.
And one of the other big things is obviously trying to get paid for it as well. I mean, we don't have the luxury of the studios like they do over east, or a lot of private investors that we know. So crowdfunders really, and I don't, short of Screen West, who there's a lot of hurdles to jump through. It's very hard for people to get paid on sets, and that's why a lot of people do short films because they know if they can't raise the budget, then people are willing. Because a lot of people just are doing it to help build up the resume.
Sure.
And so if you do a short film, it's not so much. But when you're doing one like we are, where it's gone from 16 to 40, I want to get to that point where I'm able to pay people at least something. And it's hard. I think it's weird because you get to a point where if you do 5 or 6 films, then you're like, okay, well, I'd like to start getting paid for the next lot. There's only so many you can do, where you can keep doing it for free. That type,
Yeah, and that's a good point because a lot can't. Well, I mean, a lot of filmmakers they just can't afford to pay out of their own pocket, which is understandable. I mean, we're all there sometimes, and I think raising money is obviously the best way because the crowdfunding in its essence is a good thing because so many different sources coming together to help pay for this. There's less burden on one person instead of being 50 people giving $100 each instead of one person giving $5,000. It's hard to get that, but it's a better way to go. But one thing I do think is important is on a film set, if it has been funded or it hasn't been funded, you either all get paid or none of you get paid.
That's right.
Because if you have some like just the crew get paid but the actors don't, or just the actors get paid but the crew don't, it's going to cause tension and it's not a nice environment. So in that situation, you're better off getting all not paid at all, just doing it for what you've got to do, or you all get paid something, even if it's minimal. It's just so everyone's on an even playing field. Otherwise, it can get a bit weird sometimes with the politics, obviously, which is understandable.
Yeah, that's right. And Trish Garnett said, "We love working with you, Pete."
Oh, good.
and on that, I think also, like, because obviously we don't. If you do get a budget, it's not always to be able to pay everyone at the union rates. So sometimes if you can, you try and pay everyone at the same rate, but you might have leads that just hypothetically say leads might get 150 a day and the others might get 100 a day, or and some people are like, why are they getting more than me? But it comes down as well to scenes. You might only have someone in there for 2 or 3 days, whereas where the leads there for the whole 2 weeks or whatever it is.
Sure, definitely.
And so sometimes, and even with crew, like if you have makeup and that, and you ask them what their rate is, they give it to you, but then you're like, well, this is our whole budget, and so you got to try and work around that. And even when they are getting paid, people are quite flexible to reduce it a little bit, just so at least they're getting something and getting experience to work on different sets. Because with me, although I mainly like to do horror thriller, I like to try and change them up. Like I had a version, and then I did Slice, which I got from Jason. And obviously we did Death and a Little Girl and What's Inside. What's Inside was a different one again. But horror's good, but I think if you keep doing the same like slashes, it gets boring.
Yeah, sure, that's right. And even as yourself as a producer, but even me as a filmmaker, doing a lot of the darker side stuff is fun, and I know it really well. But I did recently with funny enough with Trish and her kids and with Steve Bowker, a little pilot to a series, which is a comedy series called Odd Ones Out.
Yep.
And I'd never done a comedy before. It's just weirdly the comedy scenes, obviously they're so fun to shoot. Equally, shooting a really graphic sort of torture scene, which isn't supposed to be funny, they're so fun to shoot because everyone's having a different time. Everyone knows just fucking around, but obviously when you see it on screen, it's full on. So for me, it's a weird thing because the experience of shooting a really horrible, torturous thing and shooting a comedy is the same thing on the set. It's a weird thing, but it was one thing I found interesting.
Well, I was watching a YouTube video from a company called Film Courage, and they interviewed different filmmakers in the US, and one guy said writing horror and writing comedy are exactly the same. The principles and that sort of thing.
Totally.
But yeah, I mean, and Odd Ones Out, I didn't mind. I try to stay away from comedy because, well, for me, my personal sense of humour is that I don't find a lot of comedy funny. Like I like old school White Castle, that sort of thing. So for me, it's
right.
If I'm going to do it, I want to do it so it is funny, but I don't feel that I can do it that well. So that's why I like
Would
to
you
stick
ever
to
have a
just...
concept that you might want to put forward to a writer that you think, well, I've got an idea for a comedy, but getting a writer to write it, they might not get what you're after because it's a hard thing to try to get across. Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
And, I wanted to try a bit of directing. That's why I did it with Slice, but I didn't know enough about lenses or anything, and it was more of a baptism of fire. We literally filmed it in one day. We did the morning, we did at a house, and that they went home and come back at 6 o'clock, and we did the night time of that same day and filmed the whole film in the one day. And Tony was DP, and he's like, "What do you want to shoot now?" I said, "I don't know. What do you think?" He goes, "We'll put the camera here and shoot that way." And I think when Aaron edited it, he said, "Oh, you broke the, what was it? Is it the 360 rule or something?" He said, "Because the
180 rule."
Yeah, and I'm like, "What is that?" And so I thought I'd just stick to producing and let the directors direct.
That's it. Yeah.
But
the thing is, though, I mean, what I find, because I started off with my first feature film, I shot it and I directed it at the same time.
Yep.
So for me, knowing what lens to use for a certain depth of field or knowing that 180 rule and stuff, I had to know that myself because I was the one shooting it. So I found when I came to just directing, I could just say to someone, "Oh, look, this is a bit of a face shot, so go for a longer lens because it's going to look weird if we go to a shorter lens. We're outdoors now, so close the aperture a bit." I knew that because I had done filming. But just like you said, if you haven't filmed before and physically got a lens and put it on a camera and knew how to set everything, it'd be hard to know how to get that across to someone.
And I think also with the producing, you're sort of, although you're on set, you're sort of in the background a bit. You're just making sure that all the cogs are turning and everything. So you're not really focusing, although you're seeing what the director and they do, you're not focusing on whether they're doing close-ups or whatever. I might say to, like when we're doing a version with Aaron, what's the next shot? He said, "Oh, we're going to do a medium close-up," and then he just sets the camera up with Tony and they do the shot. And I don't ask him. I say, "Oh, what's in that?" If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I guess really, but I like learning different aspects. I've done a little bit of sound. I've helped run sound. I've done slate. and Aaron's Aaron's going to put a behind the scenes thing of a version together with my little episode of the slate. So that's it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I just decided to run slate. And as I did, instead of lifting the clap a bit, I lifted the whole thing off the board, and it was so we had about a half an hour of not being able to film. But one thing I haven't done, which hopefully I can do on this one, is actually sit in the same room with the director or who's editing and watch the edit being done, because I've actually never had that.
Sure.
I've always had the edit done and then sent to me, and what do you think? And so I like to see how that process gets done, you know?
Totally. Yeah, fair enough. And look, I mean, the thing is with editing, like, for example, if I'm editing the thing, the first step is try to just sync all the dialogue to the footage. So basically I'll cut a rough cut with just the crappy camera audio, which just sounds horrible. But once you've got that cut there, then I've got to go and try and find and piece together all the audio for that. So I've done it a few times where I've just got the whole shot and I've synced the audio to that for about 4 or 5 angles, and then I cut the scene together. And then I did a version where I just cut it together without syncing the audio yet. And then I found pieces of that audio to put, and it's the worst way to do it, where you cut it together with the camera audio first, because you've got pieces of little scenes. And you've got to find chunks of it. So, that process is really tedious. But once that's done, like, for example, getting you in as a producer to come sit over my shoulder, then the process is very quick, because then all you're doing is saying, add a few frames to that section there. Or hold his expression a bit longer. Or cut her earlier because she moved too fast, or she looked at the lens or whatever. That's not easy. So the setup before the edit takes the longest for me.
And I'm my own worst critic. So when Aaron sent me a cut of a version, I was like, did you see that reflection in the little window there? And he he goes, no, I didn't pick that up. I said, did you see this? He goes, we can't fix everything because we won't have a movie, you know? It's just, that's why I hate watching the rough cuts back. Yeah.
I know what you mean, yeah. But I mean, for example, I'll be editing a scene, and I'm looking at these things really close up, and I'm getting really into them, but I'll miss someone reflecting in a TV. Like, what the hell? It's right there. It's so obvious. So, in a way, it's good to have someone over the shoulder saying, that person, the boom operator, is right in the TV, you know? So that stuff there is important to have a second set of eyes on it. And otherwise you're going to miss stuff that's obvious, but with your editing, it's so tunnel vision, you miss the obvious stuff sometimes.
And we don't have the luxury of being able to go back and do pickup shots because of budgets and things like that. Because I remember on Black Ghost there was one scene where they were real shiny tiles, and our first idea had worn a bright pink vest, and you can see it in the tiles. She wasn't standing right, and you can see a little bit of it in the film. We tried to cut around it, but that comes down to continuity as well. But so when you're getting the audio, obviously we don't do a lot of ADR, which we might do some for this, because although we're trying to film mainly at night time and hopefully mostly indoors, but
sure.
When you get the audio, do you like the sound recorders to label the files? Does that make it easier for you? Like take one scene.
Yeah, well, even just the scene number and stuff. Like, for example, I've had the luxury of working with Ash a lot, and also Dennis Collins. So those two, and they label it. They'll give you the scene number, the take it was, and it's really nice and clear. So they're great. I've never come across a boom operator who doesn't do that. So that's been a luxury, I think, because some of them are pretty lazy. And myself included on my first film, I didn't label anything. I had to guess. So that was a big learning curve. But when you got people of quality like Ash or Dennis, they know what they're doing and they'll label it accordingly. So they're great to work with. Otherwise, it's just you're looking through a mess and you don't know what to look at. It's terrible. But they're great. And, so you need to have that. Otherwise, it's screwed.
And slating, how long before you actually say action do you want it slated? Because obviously, it takes a little while so the slate, obviously, so you can find each scene. But do you want it a couple of minutes before or just before you say action? How do you work with that?
Usually just before, because I tend to find that the whole point. Again, for anyone who isn't really accustomed to the idea of that clapping sound, that's to show for me on my audio. I can see a big spike there suddenly from a clap. So I like to be pretty much into the dialogue within a couple of seconds after that, or into the scene anyway, whatever's happening. So usually it's scene 1, take 4, shot 3. And action, clap, and then clap, and then action a couple of seconds after. Then whatever happens is fine. So I'm always looking for that little spike in the clapperboard, and that gives you my link.
So we've had Katie Brown say, I had fun working with you too, Peter. Hi, Anthony. Hey, Katie. I haven't worked with Katie. And Gary Sancho.
Katie's great. Awesome makeup artist. She's awesome.
Okay. And Gary Centrone said, "My kind of comedy is watching a fanboy Warren Money rave about a silly horror film."
That's plenty of that here.
Yeah.
That's
so
great.
we'll go and then going back to the characters. So we got Jimmy who's playing Jason, who's a vampire. Blake's playing William, who's a vampire. Jasmine is playing Raven, who is the police captain but a witch, and I think that's it for. So there's 5 of them. So there's 8 characters all up. But then we've got Demetrius, who's playing the commissioner with Victor Salazar.
Cool.
And there's going to be lots of other characters coming in and out because different creatures and things like that. So we will be casting for extras as we go along. Some will have dialogue, some won't. I know the opening scene, I think, is in a house, so there'll be Victor's wife and his teenage daughter, but they're not in it very long. Things like that.
Sure.
Where there's a detective that's got quite a bit of dialogue. So, there'll be a bit more casting going on. But with the crowdfunder, what I've done is I've tried to stay away from physical rewards. So a lot of people, they put, you can get a DVD or a poster or whatever physically. I'm not doing the Blu-ray or anything, but the posters and that you'll get online. So it'll be a digital copy. Because for me, I find at premieres you can have them there. So when we did Black Ghost, we did specific character posters. So we had the character's name with the film. And I printed out 10, and their family come and bought them, so I sold out on all those posters on the night. Because, like the female actress, her mum and dad will buy one, or a cousin will buy one, or a sister, and they're physically there.
Yeah, sure.
And besides maybe my dad and a few others, there's not a lot of people that watch DVDs anymore. It's all obviously online. But if some people ask for a physical copy because they're not very good at online, then I might put one together for them or whatever. I'll put it on a USB or something. So you'll see on the crowdfunder that you'll have a poster, you'll have a few other things, but and the script as well. But it'll all be sent digitally, so you can still have it there, print it out if you want, but it'll be on your computer. So, and there's some different rewards. There's some where you'll have Jimmy and that say a thank you if you put in a certain amount. There's one where they can come and sit in the editing suite for half a day and watch it being edited, so they get to see it before everyone else. There's other ones where there's a thank you from you, myself, and possibly Aaron, and like a day on set, and we'll write a character for you, and
that's right.
where you can also hang out in different departments. So there's lots of different ones. I think it started at $10 and it goes up to I'll tell you. I think it's either 5 or 10,000. It's But
was one of them that you can actually you can contribute and you can get killed on the film? Is that one of the? Was that one of the? or be featured in some way?
So so $10 up to 10,000. But so there's one called The First. For that you get 2 VIP tickets, and all the other rewards. So I think a poster, copy of the signed script, that sort of thing. And then you can have. Here we go. So you can get a speaking role. So this one's about $2,000. And it gives you a speaking role as a uniformed police officer, alongside the talented cast and crew for a day. You get the 2 VIP tickets to the screening, plus all the other perks. So IMDb, private screenings, photo with the cast and crew, that sort of thing. So there's those kind of ones added in. And then as you get up further, the one for like $5,000 is a custom speaking role written for you, character of your choice, dinner with the cast and crew, once the film's wrapped, and 2 VIP tickets with a limo ride to the premiere, that type of thing,
Nice.
And then the very last one is a high roller, which is $10,000, and for that one you get a custom speaking role, full day on set, help out on whichever department you choose, directing, camera, and you get all of the above perks as well. So
nice.
Yeah, and so that's, you can choose basically whatever you want.
And the goal is $30,000, which is going to get us across the line to get it produced. Yeah, cool.
I mean, we could do it for probably 20 or 25, but I think with obviously because you're doing the editing and all that as well, then there's a certain amount we need to cover your expenses. So
sure, exactly. It.
And again,
but like you said, even the cast and even the potential VFX if we need it, but otherwise, it doesn't cost of props. It's for practical things. I think there's certain things we might need to have a character jumping from a high rise to something low, or from the top of a house onto the floor. We need some stuff at the bottom to make sure they don't kill themselves.
Yeah.
So just top stuff's going to cost a bit of money. So
well, I think there's a scene where there's an arm being ripped off, and so if we can make a fake arm, otherwise we'll have to change that scene around a bit. But Trish said cool ideas with. I just gave a rough idea. So
yeah, nice.
And what I've done in the crowdfunder is I've added under the section that tells you about what's happening is I've added photos of all the cast.
Yeah.
And I've added a photo of me and you, and I've put the creatives, so you, me, and Aaron didn't want a photo, so I've just put his name, so people can actually see who's what and who's doing what.
Yeah, cool.
So just gives them a bit more of an experience, and hopefully, I mean, I know Jason Horton over in the US got Craving. They released that on. So what they did was what I'll probably do is a soft launch first to friends and family, which we can all do.
Yep.
And I think they raised about 2,000 out of that, and then from there they did the main launch. And in the first day, they had I think 100 backers or something, and they're up to 15,000. But what the soft launch does is, even if you usually they say you should be able to raise about a third of the budget doing that. But if you have two or 3,000, when you do the proper launch, people see there's already money there, and they're more inclined to put in than if there's nothing there.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
And you know it's weird though, like with crowdfunders, because I know people when you have perks for $5, they'd rather buy a coffee than put $5 in, and it's
sure.
kind of like, well, but it is what it is. Even if people can't put in, if they can share it, then that helps as
totally.
well. But
totally, exactly it.
And so to be able to make the best film we can, it'd be good to have to get as close to that budget as we can, and then if you hit that budget, you can do what's called in demand, so you can keep it running. And if people missed out, they can still put more in after after it's finished.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to hit your full target first. So,
gotcha. Yeah.
We should. When do you think we'll be launching that? Next week or this week?
Or? Oh, easily, yes, yeah. Because I'm in the home stretch now, so next week I think we're going to have that all up live, good to go.
Yep. Okay. And yeah, so that there'll be. So as Pete said, we've added in a scene where we've got 3 of them. It's Jasmine, Jimmy, and Blake talking, and then we've got them being interviewed. And it's not one where they're saying, "Oh, look, can you please give money for this?" We've tried to change it up a bit, so it's like you're there with them, and they need money to help fix the police station, or
they're in character in there. Yeah, that's right.
That's
exactly.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so we try. I mean, me and Pete might have the one where we talk to camera, but that's just you because we're just trying to make you aware of what's going on.
That's it.
But yeah, so how do you work with do you write your own stuff? Do you or like?
A lot of the time I do. Yeah, I mean, if I get asked to be like, for example, this project here, to come along and just film it, then usually the project exists already, and I've been asked to come on as cinematographer or editor or both sometimes. But yeah, typically with my own projects, I do write the scripts as well, and I produce it myself. I mean, that's a luxury I have because I know what to expect from the script. So if I direct it, then that's that. I know what to look for the characters and what they want to do. I'll sometimes have certain cast members in mind while I'm writing the script. So it's a bit of a cheat because you know the person's going to play it, and he's going to hope they want to do it. So that's always a gamble, but it's also, it's really nice to have that luxury. But I haven't really done many where I haven't written the script, but it's my project. So in other words, I haven't been purely a producer. That's something I've never delved into. Much as how you haven't tried writing yourself, you've always produced. I've never really produced ever. I've always just written and made the film. So it's a territory I've never delved into. But it's one that, and also I'm a bit unsure. What are the roles of a producer entirely? Is associate producer different to executive? Is there producer? I mean, you know more than me on that regard.
Well, there's a bit of a misconception on executive producer and producer. So essentially, if you have a studio, the executive producer is, although they're the top because the studio will give them the money, and then it's their job to find a producer, and then they give the producer the money, and the producer goes and makes a film. But most of the time, it doesn't happen so much here because we don't really have EPs or it's so small. But most of the time, once on big productions, once the executive producer has given the money, that's it. They have no creative control over the film at all.
Okay.
All they do is they make sure that the film's being made on budget as much as possible. that it gets finished and gets out to distributors or gets out to wherever it's got to go.
Right.
If they need more money, try and go and ask for that. Maybe bring investors to set, that type of thing. There are some exceptions to the rule, like Clint Eastwood. If he comes on as executive producer on a film, then he'll probably have a say in how it's done, that sort of thing. But here we don't really have that, because we don't have a studio where, unless, say, for example, if you put in a certain amount of money, then you'd have an executive producer credit.
Okay.
So executive producers are, I hate saying it, but glorified bean counters. Basically, that's what they're the money. Right. They're the money people. That's all they are.
Yeah.
Then you can have a co-producer. So, you can have someone else that helps you produce, like me and Danica, but you still have a main producer, and the co-producer helps out. Executive producers, so you have a line producer. So a line producer is basically the producer's right-hand person. So they will do all the call sheets. They'll do all the paperwork, look after the budget, do everything, while the producer does the other side of it. And then
it's the logistics of the shoot,
Yeah. Then you have associate producer who's underneath them, and they just sort of help out on other bits. They might help out in the production. If you have a production like office set up, they might help out in there printing things out. So they go down, but most of the time on our sets, the producer is the main person, unless like you have. So you can have an executive. I could make myself an executive producer if I wanted to, if I put money in.
Yeah.
But for me, it's so really that's the difference between them.
And I suppose at the indie level, I've found anyway, indie level, you're almost wearing 50 hats. In my regard, I direct, I shoot, sometimes I'll even hold the boom, catering as well, But the higher tier you go in the film industry, like when you get to like the Hollywoods and stuff, they've got a role. Every single person's got their own role. So you might have a director with, not a co-director, but like an associate. There'll be 50 different people doing different roles. Whereas here we do it all in one hit. We've got to do it all for budget reasons, and also because we can't afford to, creative control as well. So in a way, starting at indie level, where you got to do it yourself, you're learning all the different facets of the filmmaking part. Only thing I haven't done really is the makeup. I can't, and I wouldn't trust myself with that.
No.
But everything else I sort of dabbled in, even in front of the camera, you just sort of get a sense of all the departments when you're at the indie level. When you get to the higher level, if you come from there, you'll be so well versed in what you need to do for every different role, you could put yourself anywhere. You're sort of a jack of all trades by being at the lower level starting off, whereas people who just start at the top and they just go into it, they might have one skill. They might be an awesome director, but they don't know how to put any sound design or folding together. Or there might be an amazing cinematographer, but no idea how to operate the boom mic properly to get the best audio. But if you've done it from the start, you do all that yourself, and you know how to make it work. So it's a curse and also an awesome learning curve to be able to have to do it yourself sometimes. And where we are right now in the city, and where we are with our sort of level in the industry, we have to sort of do those roles where you've got to wear all those producer hats, because you haven't got 50 people you can rely on to do all the different parts. If you have the luxury of a budget, great, but if not, then it's good just to do it all yourself.
And I mean, like even on Gary Centrone's film Crown of Thorns, Flowers, I can't remember what it's called. I helped out in the lighting. Yeah, I helped out in the lighting department there, and Aaron Camp's film True Reflection, I was production manager. So, I don't mind doing different things, but like you said, I don't see the point in having a casting director. So I might send you photo. What do you think of this person, or the video auditions? This one's going to have a minimal crew. I'm still thinking whether or not to get a first AD. It'd probably be handy, because then obviously they can do the call sheets. It takes the pressure off you and I, because you'll have you'll have shot lists and that to do. But I might get a couple of PAs, and when you're saying start from the bottom, PAs are important as well, because the PAs are the ones that run around and get water or do this, and then they can work themselves up. Because I know some PAs that when they're on set, they're like, oh wow, I really like the camera work. So then they become interested in becoming a DOP, and whether they go to school or they just learn on set. And so
totally.
It's, like you're saying, if PAs are very, very important, people don't think they are, but like extras. If you have a film, I know a lot of people don't like being extras on set, because they're like, no, I want to be the star or whatever. But could you imagine films like Gladiator or things like without extras? You just can't do it. And
no,
I mean,
exactly
there are some where they, like the Queen movie they made. They only got half the crowd, so they had to computer generate the rest of the crowd to fill up the stadium. Sure. But
that's right.
You still need to have a certain amount there, and some people just don't want to do it, and they're the people. Even when I'm on set, I work with people, and I make a mental note, so then I know the next film. Okay, I'll contact this person because they did it. Because you get some people that are just there because they've got nothing else to do, and they might be on their phone all day, and you ask them to do something like, "Oh, how do we do it?" Whereas others are there, they might not know the role, but they're really enthusiastic to learn.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
And so then next film comes along, it's like, okay, that's the first person I'll contact, and that type of thing, you know.
Absolutely, and it's so right, because there are some people you work with where you would have done it on a separate film, and you've met them on that set, and you just connected really well, or you just found they were just working really well. So when you do your own film or you do another one, you call upon them. So that, again, that's where it comes back to when I was saying before, reputation is paramount. If you've got a great reputation, you are easy to work with, and you are keen to learn, you're going to get a lot more work. No matter how many, your ego is not going to get you there. Your likability is going to get you there. That's the biggest thing I've found. You have to be, otherwise you're not going to get work.
And so Trish just said doing extras work is a great way to learn and meet people, which...
Totally, and networking. Totally, Trish. Yep.
And, like you said, even the... it's even good for IMDb credits as well, because a lot of people, if they say they want an IMDb credit, as they do more films, that starts to build up. So if someone is interested in a PA or whatever, they can go on IMDb, type in the name. Gary said it depends on each project. Robert Rodriguez, successful Hollywood filmmaker, returned to his roots and recently made a 7K film, minimal crew and wore many hats. That's right.
That's true, yeah. Good point, actually. There you go. Very good point. It's so true. And the thing is, at his heart, I think he's an indie filmmaker. He started in the same way that Tarantino was an indie filmmaker at his heart.
I like Tarantino as well, so...
Yeah, and you can see their sensibility in there. They haven't come from the machine, so to speak. They really have come as filmmakers in their own right. They've done those little jobs where they started off just doing everything, and that's why their films are so much more rich, because they know exactly what they want from that film. They might have had a hand in writing the story. They might have had a hand in choosing the cast themselves. So, or they just know the story so intimately that they know they're going to get that from this character or from this actor. There's so much you can do with at the indie level that you can't really do at the really high end. And I think I'd much rather sit down and watch an amazing indie film than see some hugely CGI-driven Marvel film. They got their value of course, but to me the story is paramount. And if you can't get that across, it's not going to be a good film.
That's right. My dad just said, "Good work, guys." Also, if any of you have any questions, just put them up. That's right, and I think it's more okay. I know someone who's worked on like a $2 million film and then a $50,000 film.
Yeah.
And they said one of the bigger differences was, say, with props, for example. So what might happen is you, I don't know, just say you've got something and it breaks. You have to figure out a way to fix it. If you're on a $2 million film, you just buy another one. And they said the amount of money that gets wasted on the bigger budget films, you actually, by being on a low budget film, if you then get on a bigger budget film, you know how to budget and how to make the money last longer because you've had to.
Yeah, you're more resourceful. That's right.
You've had to do that, yeah. So I guess in a way with us working on indie films, if we get the chance to work on a bigger one, then it's kind of like, okay, we know the ins and outs and, we know how to make things work. And if something breaks, then... Because I know with Aaron's film, he just did Thorns and Thistles, same thing. It was just minimal crew. He put his own money towards it, so... we didn't have a gaffer as such, so me and him were changing lights around, and I was doing slate, and I was in the car operating the police lights, and so we were just doing everything, and
totally. And it's funny you mention that because as you know, like Steve Keogh, a mutual friend of ours that we've worked with both, he actually was featured in my first feature film, and he played a homeless person, and we would shoot at the underpass near my house, and because I was just doing it myself and I had this little cheap second-hand camera, and the lighting was literally my phone camera light held against his face off screen, and that would light him up. He went from that to going the next week after to New Zealand on the Mulan 2020, the $200 million film, because he was a horse wrangler. He helped out with that film there. He said he had way more fun on my film, sitting there in the underpass with this little thing, as opposed to being on this massive, like this. As far as I can see, you can see the trailers and trailers and trailers. Yeah. He just said it didn't feel like it was. He didn't feel like he was connected to anything really there. It was just a hard thing to enjoy. It was purely work. There was nothing magical about it. It was with us. It was like, well, you're in the thick of it. We're making this happen. we're guessing, we're inventing it on the fly how we're going to do this, and it's just so much more joyful because you can be so much more intimately involved in the process as opposed to being told what to do.
And no, like you said, you might do something, and then say someone like Steve might say, "Oh, hang on, maybe we can do it this way," and we try to get a better shot. Whereas on those big films, you don't. You've got the cinematographer. No, we're doing it this way, and besides not having a lot of time, they just don't like you to like having the input. When I was doing some acting, I was on a film, and I was used to helping move stuff, so I was going to help move some lights, and there was no money in it or anything, and they said no, we're going to move it. The actors don't do it. I'm like, oh, okay. So in case you hurt yourself or whatever. But then I've been on other films where I've helped move everything around. So it all just, I guess, and I find that like I've acted in a few films and helped in other ones, and each producer or each production company works differently. Even as far as like sound, speeding, and action. Everyone calls out those commands differently as well, and But it seems to work, and what
it does.
When people, and going back to what we were saying before about people that criticise, I don't mind that as long as it's constructive criticism, not a personal attack. If they're like, oh, the sound wasn't as good in this, then you try and make the sound better in the next one or whatever. But if they're just like a completely personal attack, then that's when it's not right.
And they're obvious. You can tell straight away when someone's trying to be like, you know what, you guys have done a good job here, but if you just fix that up there, it'll be better. That's an awesome thing to hear. But you want to grow as a filmmaker. But when you can tell sometimes when there's a bit of a snide remark or you just ignore them straight away. And the more you get those, the easier it is to bat them away and not worry about it. But at the starting, when you first pour your heart and soul into this, when you hear those little comments, you take them personally. And you realise afterwards, well, that you taking it personally isn't going to make it better. It's going to make it a lot worse because you're going to be self-conscious next time. And sometimes that opinion was an awful opinion of theirs about what you should have done with the lighting or what you should have done with this character or whatever. And that's why you've got to be really comfortable and know what you want from your story. As a filmmaker, as a director, if you are confident with the story, no matter what anyone throws at you, if you feel you've got it across from what your vision was, then that's all that matters. And you hope people connect with it. If some don't, you can't really control that, but you hope that what your vision was, if it comes across, then that's the paramount thing. So on that point, have you ever come across a film that you've done? You had an idea for a film, you got a writer, it came to production, that turned out completely different to how you wanted it?
Well, Slice, I got off someone, so that was.
And then you directed that one, didn't you?
Yeah, but I tried to keep that as true to what it. What's Inside was very similar. I think, if anything, maybe a version, because I had a different idea for. Yeah. The scene, we shot one scene, it was a proof of concept, but I had a little bit of a different idea to how I wanted. I originally wanted it shot with a couple of people in the rooms and them being or their phobia being tortured in the rooms. But then Aaron was like, well, I think if we do the kitchen scene or the dining room scene, it doesn't give away all their phobias at once, and it actually ended up working out good. But
nice.
But yeah, I originally had a different idea for it in my head. Even with the script now, the way the script is, it's gone a little bit off from where I wanted it, but it's actually worked out better because it's introduced some different elements, and a couple of characters are taken out, a few different ones are put in, that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, I'd probably say that was the main one. What's Inside was similar to how I wanted it. Not a lot changed, and I think also having the writer on set can help a bit as well. Like we had Nigel on set of What's Inside, trying to follow the script as much as we can. I know some people don't like having the writer on set because sometimes they try to direct as well.
Sure. Yeah, it was hard to pull back from.
But short of having a script supervisor or somebody, then the writer's obviously the next best person to have on there.
Totally, yeah.
So yeah, besides, Aversion really was the only one that I think maybe deviated a little bit. But what about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for me, I think the whole experience of my first feature film, I did everything wrong. I didn't have the script even finished before I started filming. I was writing as I was going along. There were certain characters that I just wrote into it because I felt that there needed to be something else happening here. I ended up having too much footage and too much of a story. So my idea was really for a series, but I tried to cram it into one film. And even as it was 115 minutes. It was a long film. But I had to let some people down. I had to, people who had been in the film, whole scenes, whole story arcs had to get cut out. Otherwise, it would have been a 4-hour film, which I just couldn't justify. So that was my bad, where my own writing sort of was my undoing. I just got too excited. But, you know, to be fair, it was my first one. I didn't know how it worked with script, how long that would be.
Anticipation was good. I enjoyed it. It was a good film because...
And that's a condensed version. It's crazy. There's so many more scenes out of that.
And being a muso myself, it incorporated stuff that you know, a lot of people have an interest in. Gary Centrone says every shot and take is an adaptation of the written word. So,
it's so true, Gary. And I mean, and the beauty of it, sometimes when you're on set, you might have done a table read. You might have had, that's all good to go. Table read sounded good. You get to set, and the actor does something different, and you think, actually, that's the way to go. Do it that way.
Yep.
If you're open to some last-minute changes on the fly, sometimes the gold comes out of that. And I think being too anal and being like, no, the script is this way, the table read was this way, we've got to do it that way, it can be really quite detrimental sometimes. So sometimes you've got to step back and say, well, am I serving the film, or am I serving myself here? And that's one big lesson I found. It's important to serve the film. There might be different to what your vision was, but where it's going is actually a better idea. And if you can stand back and see that as a filmmaker, it's going to be so much more of a complex story than what you would hope for, and less painful for everyone as well, because you're just going to sit there trying to get this one thing. Probably isn't worth it. You know, just go with what feels right.
And I mean, even with this film, like, you know, when I cast the people, I said, "Oh, look, we're going to try and get you your character briefs as much as I can, but you know, I like to give them even before we start shooting a couple of weeks or a couple of months. So just go away and try and develop your own character. Think. Okay, if you're a vampire, what would you do? How would you work in a scenario like that where you're a part of a police force where you're trying not to be noticed by people and things like that? And I think it works better if you give them the freedom to be able to develop their own character instead of saying, no, you need to play this way and there's no flexibility.
Totally.
And because that way you get a better performance. And I'm not sure what your take is, but I think a bit of improv every now and then as well sort of helps work, because I always look at the script as a guideline. Like, you know, you lay out, okay, this shot's happening here, this fight scene's happening here, but a lot of the time with the dialogue, like when we did the table read for What's Inside as well, we found out that even with the narration, you know, you time how long it goes with the narration, then without, and you end up sometimes going from that much dialogue down to that much because it just drags out too long or doesn't fit, and or a lot of the time the actors will put in their input and it works out sometimes better than what we did. So, I think, like you said,
that's right.
Trying to work for other people and to make the film better, you've got to get out of that headspace, whereas this is my film and I'll do it the way I want to do it, you know?
That's right, exactly. And I think there's an important point about the dialogue is that some people will say a certain line, in your head you heard it being said this way, but someone will come along who's been cast for the role, they'll say it a different way and it just sounds terrible. It doesn't work. Not their fault. It's because they don't say it that way. So you change one word or you change one way, as long as the line is meaning the same thing. If they say it differently and it works better, you go with that. The word for word is pointless when it comes to casting, because you want to get the sentiment across, not the word. And they'll say a line differently, and it doesn't matter if the words are different. If the meaning is there and they do it naturally, it's going to be better.
Have you ever got to the point where you did, like, you've written the script and then you do the table read and it's all good, but then you get onto set and it's like a lot of it's just changed, the dialogue that's just changed completely because either the actors think it fits somewhere else or you're like, it doesn't quite fit, or have you tried to stick to the script after the table read as much as possible?
I do find that after a table read, they'll tend to be, they're more relaxed on set because they know what's coming and they've gone through it with the other cast member, so they're feeling pretty natural. But what I do like to do is I encourage them to just, if you find you go through the lines and you go a bit off script, just go with it. Don't stop and say, oh, sorry, we'll start again. I'll let them just go with it, because they might go on a tangent that's completely different. So, like, you know, for example, in my film, there was the way that a certain line was delivered. I hadn't written it that way, but the character had a certain story arc that just it naturally went to this other place that wasn't part of the film, but his background, he just threw it in there, the little incidental line, but it just made him seem like more of an interesting character. He wasn't two-dimensional anymore. He sort of gave a little bit of an insight into his past, even though it wasn't written to the character. Him saying that and me putting it in the film made him feel more real. And another thing I've also found, you can tell when an actor is acting and when they're not. And what I mean by that is sometimes the real person who's playing the role, if they're just being themselves saying those lines, can feel much better than them trying to be this archetype of a musician or a basketball player or a builder. If they are embodying themselves, if they're embodying that character and they do it naturally, that's great. But if they're just being themselves, saying these lines, sometimes that's the best thing you can do. So in a way, sometimes encouraging them not to act, so to speak, is a good thing.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. Gary Centrone just said there's 3 things for him. Number 1 is achieving below your imagination due to technical and performance. Yep. Number 2 is achieving as per imagination. And number 3 is achieving above imagination.
Yeah, cool. Exactly. And the thing is, I mean, a lot of that stuff comes naturally. I mean, if you sit down and think about trying to achieve or look for those 3 things, you're going to just give yourself a headache. But if you just open to saying, well, this is the way it's going to go. It's either going to be, I'm either going to achieve below this, I'm going to get it, or I'm going to go above. If I'm going to just let myself do this, it's going to feel more natural. That will be a very natural thing, as opposed to trying to get that, you know. If you're trying to strive for it, sometimes it's going to be terrible. You're going to see force. You're going to seem forced. You're going to seem unnatural. Whereas, you know, sometimes and the delivery of a line can be miles apart as far as the way it feels, just by the way you're feeling as a character on that day or as a person on that day. You might have had a bad day at work. You go on a shoot in the afternoon, and then you suddenly you got this pent up anger, and you're putting it in the line. That line would have sounded so different if you had a great day at work. That might not be a bad thing, you know. So sometimes you can't help but let out what you are as a person. Let that out in the character. You can't just switch off who you are to be this character. Sometimes that comes through in the character, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, and you know, like you were saying about trying to act too much, when we did a film in 2016 called The End, some of the people that come for audition were theatre actors, and we found that trying to get a theatre actor to come down to a certain level was a lot harder than trying to get an actor to go up to a level, because theatre actors are already naturally big in what they do in their performances and that. So trying to get them to bring it to another level. So there's theatre actors are good, but some of them, it's harder for them to come down to the level you need for film.
I wonder if the reason for that is purely logistics of them being heard by an audience member 15 metres away. Maybe because they're trying to say a line that can be said really quietly in the camera because the microphone's right here. Whereas on the stage, they've got 15 metres away. They've got to try and project that. So naturally, they're going to be really out there already. So suddenly you can say, no, calm down and just do it quietly. It must feel unnatural to them to do that. So it's a good point.
Podcast I was listening to, they had Sir Ian McKellen, who played like Magneto.
Oh, yeah?
And he said the same thing. He said, when you're in a theatre, like you're saying, you've got to project. But he said, when you're on a film, you have the luxury of either redoing ADR, so going back and redoing your lines again, or you can talk quieter. Yeah. Yep, talk quieter, talk louder, and you have the ability to do multiple takes, whereas theatre you can't. You have to get it right, and you don't have a script or anything to fall back on, essentially. And you are the theatre actors are essentially the directors. They're the ones running the show, because once the director does it, they leave. Whereas on set, you've got someone sort of controlling everything you do. So I've never really. I did a bit of theatre at school, but I've never really been that much into theatre, just because.
Sure.
I mean, they're very good at what they do. For me, theatre's not an interest of mine. I found that with theatre actors is they're a lot bigger when they audition than normal actors. Which I guess is good as well, because if you need someone to be a big character, then you've already naturally got it there. But if you got something, but you want to bring down and do crying or have a sad then it's a bit harder to direct.
It can be. That's right. But again, I suppose most people are sort of, once they've been on set for a while, or they've gone through table read, once they know they can calm down and just be like a normal person and not have to sing out to someone 15 metres away, they tend to be able to sort of capture that moment. But it must be a transition period for them to be able to switch off the theatre head and put on the film head,
Yeah, and so with your casting as well, how do you pick your actors? Because I notice in films you do, whether you've written them or not, you use, which a lot of people do, and myself, you use a lot of sort of the same actors. Is that because you're either used to working with them or you like working with them?
Yeah. Oh, look, for me, I hit the jackpot when I went and casted for my first film. I literally put out a post online this is back in early 2017, and I just said, look, I'm making a film. It's my first film ever. I was a no name back in 2017 for the film industry at all. So I was just randomly fishing out for randoms to come towards me, and out of that, I found Steve Keogh, who played one of my characters. I found Kate Lloyd, who played the amazing Haley in my film. I found Paul Cuz, who played Mick. All these big characters were just coming through and saying, "Oh, I'll give it a shot," and they were just so good. And they made my film look better than it should have, because they acted so well in it. It made my script seem like it was an actual script, which it wasn't, you know. So for me, character is important. Oh yeah, Glenn Herbert. And again, I didn't meet him that way. I met him because a few years earlier he came to me for my recording. I was actually producing his music for him. So I've known him a couple of years before we started this project. So he's the only one I knew in the script, in the cast. I'd known him for a couple of years beforehand. Everyone else were just randoms who came to me, and then I happened to put him in there. And it was really a gamble. I didn't even screen test him. I just said, "Yeah, there's a role for a bar owner. Can you play like a company sort of bar owner?" "Yep, sure." Came in, and on the day we filmed, I met him. Like I did everything wrong, but it was so lucky it worked.
Yeah, right.
It was crazy. But yeah, to answer your question, since then I've always used them because they're so good at what they do, you know, and I write for them, and they're just awesome.
Well, Gary Centrone said, "Theatre's about the projection and opera of it. On film, the performance has to be contained or expressed to a realistic tone," which is...
Yeah, you're totally right. And that's it. It really is. I mean, theatre, you have to project. If you don't project and you're sort of quiet and being emotional, no one's going to care. You got to be big and loud, and especially with opera, geez, you know, that's a whole other level after theatre. So he's totally right. So to come from that to suddenly a quiet film set where everyone's been told to be quiet, you know, we're filming, and then you've got to talk, and there's a mic right here, and there's a camera in your face, it must be so daunting for a theatre actor to just come into that environment.
Yeah, and so when you did Anticipation, did you... Obviously, Glenn was already a musician, but would you prefer to have a musician and maybe teach them to act, or an actor and try and teach them to play an instrument?
Well, I mean, in my naivety, I thought, well, I'll just get musicians who I knew and get them to act themselves. What I didn't want, and I thought that was the best way to go, and luckily it worked out really well. But a lot of the ones who played the musicians in the film had never acted before, but I knew them in the music industry, so I thought, well, they'll come in, they're musicians already, I'll just have them be themselves, and that worked amazingly well. What I didn't want was to have an actor coming in and try and play a musician if they weren't one already. Because in my mind, which is, you know, silly, but I thought, well, they can't do that. They can't just imagine being a musician, which I'm sure they could have. But I always imagine they just play a caricature of a musician, you know, just a bit too, I don't know, just the ponciness and the arrogance, and or just the stoner head, you know, just it's like someone coming in who's never surfed in their life and never lived in that lifestyle, come in and be a surfer. You imagine that be a bit of a caricature of what a surfer is. Whereas in reality, they're just people who surf, and they're just normal, and their personality is what they are. They don't have to act like any other way. So with me, I wanted to have musicians coming in and actually do the roles just as themselves. And a lot of the musicians who were in that role, they did amazingly well. You know, like for example, the guy who played Jim in my film, he's a musician, incredible actor. He's amazing, you know. And he didn't feel like a caricature. He actually felt like the most character acted person. But that's him. That's really him. It's not like he was putting on that. It wasn't. That was him. It's amazing. He came across so well. He did it so well. And a lot of them did that. They were being themselves. And for me, that's why I got lucky with my first film. They were being themselves, and they were natural, just reading those lines. They weren't trying to act a certain way. The only one who really did that was Glenn, because he was the main character, and he had to have a certain, you know. But everyone else, they just did what they did, and it just turned out beautifully. So I was lucky. That wasn't anything to do with me doing it right. I did it completely wrong. I got lucky. And since then, I've tried to do it right, because I know now what not to do. So, so in that regard, for me, making a film took me 2.5 years to make. I learned so much more than if I just went to do a course for a couple of years. Doing that, making the mistakes, finding out how am I going to fix this. Or that whole night we shot, the audio didn't work because the cable got pulled out, and when you pull out the cable, it doesn't save what you've just done. It gets rid of it all. I learned that the hard way. I didn't find that out afterwards. So I had to fix things along the way. So 2.5 years of that, you learn some pretty cool skills. and you carry them on. You never forget them because they haunt you otherwise. So,
did you find you had to give the actors a lot of direction, or they were pretty good at what they did?
Yeah, yes. And in that regard, I think what I did do right is I was very clear with what I wanted them to do. If they were delivering a line that they felt worked really well, but for me it wasn't quite working, I got them to do it again in the way I did it. But I didn't say they were doing it wrong, because in my mind, again, I was so open to just thinking, well, this could be the way to go. I might go with this take. So I get them to do it again the way I wanted it to, and I was very clear. I'd actually do the line to them in the way I wanted them to deliver it. So okay. I try and basically say, look, I've got to have cred here. I want you to do it this way, so here's how I want you to do it, and I'll show them. So a lot of the time I was trying to just say these lines back to them the way I wanted it done, and 9 times out of 10 they could do that. And funny enough, sometimes I'd use the version that I didn't think I was going to use. I thought maybe they were just too subdued, they weren't really giving enough emotion. But actually on review, when I was doing the edit, that actually felt good. It wasn't too over the top. It was actually where it needed to be, nice and subdued. Or they gave an awesome look here. I thought that was too much before, but nah, it's perfect. With the sound over that now and the song, that's an awesome look. So things like that, I just made sure I had too much material. I had too much takes. And that way I could just pick and choose, and that was the luxury of my edit. It took months to do because it was so much to go through, but it was good because I had the burden of choice. I had so much choice. And as a result, some of the stuff I chose was things I didn't think I was going to use. So you just never know.
Yeah, cool. Well, I think we'll wrap this up shortly because it's almost an hour and a half. But
oh wow!
the cast that we've got. So we did a photo shoot. We did the promo. I know a lot of them because I thanked a lot of them on the way home from the photo shoot, and they said that it was everyone, whether they knew each other or not, were really friendly and they're looking forward to working with each other. And I think that if you can get them to gel like that, because I try to keep my sets as fun as possible, and when it's time to film, it's time to film. But I like to have a bit of a laugh and a joke, whereas I've been on some sets where you can't even say anything, you know.
Exactly.
And I think because a lot of the actors, like you said, know each other. They can sort of feed off each other quite a bit as well, and a lot of them end up like if there's certain scenes of dialogue, some of them will say to each other, "I'll get together and say, why don't we try and do it this way?" And they do it amongst themselves, sort of thing. So, I think that works out really well. But
that's right.
Before we go, we've got a actual Facebook page, Tales of the Outlands. So if you haven't been invited, feel free to go join that. When the crowdfunder gets dropped, if you can't contribute, if you could share it, that'd be awesome. But what's the best thing you're looking forward to about this shoot, Pete?
For me, it's just capturing this world that Aaron's created and really making it unique. Like you said, I don't want to get into the Harry Potter magicalness. I don't want to get into the supernatural sort of drama. I want to find a space and find a pocket that's unique. And my job, as far as I'm concerned, is to bring Aaron's vision to life. And I'm excited about that because, like I said, it's not my script, it's not my project, but I'm in charge of getting that camera to do what it needs to for Aaron. And for me, I love those sort of challenges. You know, it's exciting. It's new territory for me because it's a dark, but it's also got the practical and VFX in it. So for me, it's just getting stuck into the actual production. Post-production, obviously, is going to be what it is. It's always fun to do, but I think the production itself, I can't wait. It's going to be awesome.
We've just had another YouTuber called Simplified Filming has just said hi there. How you doing?
Nice. Take on it.
That's right, and it'd be good to see the vision I had that's been written down actually come to life. I like seeing that, even though, because the problem I have with writing is I can get the first part of it. I know what I want to happen, and I know how I want to finish. But getting the bits in the middle, I just can't seem to write all together on paper. That's why. And when I explain it to people, they're like, "Yeah, that's okay. So you want this, It's a bit muddled up." So they sort of write it down in acts. Like I can't put the acts together 1, 2, and 3. I know how I want the start and I know how I want the finish, but I just can't gel it all together. So that's why I prefer to get someone else to write and just stick to sort of what I know, if you know what I mean.
No, fair enough. Yeah, that's cool. That's good. And the thing is, you surround yourself with enough writers and enough crew, and it's a team. Again, to finish off, it's a team effort. There should be no hierarchy on a film set. You know, there's respect, of course, for the writer, for the director, for the cinematographer, for the caterer. They should all be equal, though, because everyone's there to make this thing come to life. No one is lesser involved. No matter what you are, if you're the main lead actor or an extra, you belong on that set. You've got the right to be on that set, and your voice should be heard. No matter what idea you have, you bring it forward. It should always be important.
And if you have an idea, feel free to, you know, if the director's busy, come up to myself or someone else and just give us an idea. So do you think it'll work this way? And
Exactly
then,
it.
You know?
Exactly it. Yep.
Cool. So again, everyone, if we're going to drop the crowdfunder probably next week, and
next week.
But keep an eye out on all these pages because we're going to be posting photos and other sort of stuff as we go along. I will drop the promo video again on each page, and
Nice.
the next stage for us is when Aaron's finished this draft, we'll get together and do a table read, and then from there you'll nut out the final shooting draft, and then
Perfect.
after that we can start filming.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Pete, and thanks to everyone that watched and commented. And
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for hosting us tonight, Anthony. Awesome.
No worries. And as we get closer to actually filming, we'll probably try and jump on with a few of the cast and that, and we'll just see what their thoughts are before we sort of
Great
start
stuff.
filming.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Awesome. Thanks, Pete.
All right, cool. No worries at all.
I'll let you go and I'll catch up with you.
All right, okay. Catch you later, mate. Have a good one.
See you, everyone. Bye.